Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Godzilla podcast. While I'm not really talking anymore about some of the Godzilla related news, like in terms of, let's say, the upcoming sequel and the so called Monsterverse, I will still give this. I have seen the latest Kong movie, the Kong Skull Island movie, just saw it the other week, and so I thought I would give a review of it as well. That way you can hear my thoughts, my opinions, see if anyone else has seen it, and see what they have thought of this movie too. And then that way this in turn will be my formal review of the movie. It's still out there in theaters now. If you have a chance, I do recommend seeing it. First off, I'm going to say that it's a pretty good movie. Not great, but not bad either. In fact, it was quite surprising to see the turn that this movie did. So if you still have a chance, go out there and see it. I do recommend that it's worth the couple of bucks that you'll spend for it. And then that way you'll get to see what is the so-called second movie in the Monsterverse. So here's my formal review with regards to the Kong Skull Island movie. For starters, it was great to finally see something starting out right, like in terms of the action. With regards to the slow build up, the slow burn that the Godzilla 2014 film had, here, by the way, I'm going to talk about spoilers about the film, so if you haven't had a chance to see it, I'm giving you a warning now that some of the spoilers I'm going to be discussing here. But yes, right from the beginning of the film, you do get to see Kong in some of his glory, and that's because he makes an appearance to try to, I guess, quell a fight that's happening between two characters at the beginning of the film. So great stuff with regards to that, and it leads to that after you get an introduction with some of the other characters, where when they visit the Kong Skull Island, he's right there right from the get-go, right from the beginning, as opposed to, again, the Godzilla 2014 film, where you have to wait almost towards the middle of the film just to see Godzilla, and then that infamous cut was then placed outside of the fight, and then you have to wait till later on to see Godzilla again. But nope, in this case, Kong was full front center right then and there, and it was great to see him in action. Another great thing about it was the acting was pretty good. I mean, they cast some really good people within the film. Goodman's character really stood out. He was the main guy, I guess, associated with Monarch, which is like the universal link between the Monsterverse films. In his case, he's the advocate for trying to make sure that they can be a team investigating the Skull Island, the infamous Skull Island. And it was great to see some little nuances within the film too, because Monarch is apparently an underfunded department within the government, almost seen as like a recluse department that needs to just go away. They see it as chasing Bigfoots, I think was one of the lines that were used within the film. So it was interesting to see that because it adds realism to that fact. Imagine if there truly was an agency out there within the government that was trying to find 100-foot tall monsters. You would see the hesitation that a lot of the government budgets would have. So it was great to see that part too. Another great character was Samuel L. Jackson's character, who played a colonel that was on the eve of having to, I guess, get away from the Vietnam War, because the timing of the film is right during the last days of the Vietnam War. But in his case, he's someone that longs for the war to continue. Maybe in a way that he wanted it to be victorious, or maybe in a way that he's a lifelong military commander. He wanted to be able to, I guess, be able to lead battlefields throughout the rest of his career. But now with this Vietnam War ending, he was longing for another action of sorts, and then that's when this mission was assigned to him, and he was more than happy to do so. That was the biggest surprise of the film too. The movie, the previews, the trailers do not do justice when it comes to Jackson's character. He is probably the top character other than Kong within the film. I mean, he has the most role, he has the biggest storyline as well. He was there from the beginning almost towards the very end, so it was interesting to see that Jackson's character was by far the most prominent character of them all. In fact, you could say the reason for this is because it's almost like a Apocalypse Now movie. If you've seen that movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. How his colonel is probably the same as the colonel in that movie, where both of them remain the biggest characters of the film. That was another thing that surprised me too, the way that this movie played itself, just like Apocalypse Now, where it's on the hunt for an elusive, mysterious character slash creature, in this case being Kong, and then finding him, and then realizing the ramifications of it thereafter. Another good character within the film was, I guess, a myriad of the minor characters. Some of them were the scientists from Monarch, some of them were the government agents, some of them were the soldiers themselves. I like that they cherry picked some good lines. There was some good deliveries, some good lighthearted moments. It showed that these people were human. They're not simply just backdrop cannon fodder that it's just going to be killed later on. No, in this case, when you truly see them get killed, it does make an impact. Like, for example, one of the characters was I think he was with Monarch, but I think actually he was more with the State Department assigned to Monarch. Either way, he was someone that was there very hesitant to go onto the island, pretty much was overruled, and then once there, he of course survived throughout most of the film, but there's this one moment when bam, all of a sudden he's picked off of the boat that they're traveling by a pack of some kind of, I guess, pterodactyls, tiny birds, reptilian birds. They pick them off. They look like they're not too much of a threat, but as a pack, you can see the viciousness of it because it only took a few seconds. But by that point, they were carrying him off into the sky, and then they started to rip him apart piece by piece. It was horrible, but yes, but at the same time, it was believable to realize the danger that Skull Island had. And then there were other attacks too on the soldiers. One of them was by a giant spider. Just like that, in an instant, it killed one of the soldiers by impaling him with one of the long legs of the spider. And then that's not even getting close to touching the monsters involving the skull crawlers, as John C. Reilly's character mentioned it, because those were horrid. Actually, by far the most deadliest creatures of all. One of them was able to take out a multitude of soldiers, let alone the big one thereafter. That's another great character too, was John C. Reilly's. He was the biggest, I guess, kept secret of the film. Like, he was the one you could tell that was the fan favorite. Every time he was on screen, people loved his presence. He basically played a soldier that was adrift, left afterwards, after World War II, was it? Within the island, and then finally, with them coming on board during the Vietnam era, he was out of commission, out of the world for over 3 decades. And so in his case, running into the group now, he was able to catch up on things. It was the funniest moments were him asking questions related to what was going on in the world, like, and then them responding and letting him know the facts, and then him realizing that a lot of it sounded stupid, but it was the real thing that was happening. But yes, he was absolutely a big fan delight. He was someone that was a little crazy, it seemed like, because he was so far lost into the island for all those years. He couldn't quite believe that he was being rescued, but at the same time, he was someone that knew that he had to get off the island and was willing to assist them any way whatsoever. I could totally tell that more scenes were probably added to make sure that his character, after test screening showing that he was no doubt the favorite of all the test audiences, that more scenes were shot to ensure that they could give him a happy ending too. The only other characters though that were hit and miss, the missed ones were Hiddleston's character and then the girl, Brie Larson. It's not that they were missed per se, but they didn't have much to do. In fact, it seemed like based on all the trailers that Hiddleston's character was going to be the biggest one, but he wasn't. He was mainly almost not a cameo, but definitely like relegated to a side role. Like, he was basically someone hired to help track something within the island, not necessarily being told what it was, but being paid big money to do so nonetheless. And he had very few scenes showing him in action. It seemed like the film was a little bit too short. Maybe if they added another 15-20 minutes, they could have added more character moments. But otherwise, his character was definitely on the side. And then the girl Brie Larson, she was basically there to make sure she could take pictures of the entire event. That's one thing that I questioned though, because it seemed like why would she be there if it was counterintuitive? Because it was played. There was a prominent scene where she discussed that she was someone that took very scandalous, not scandalous, but very controversial pictures of the Vietnam War to showcase the true brutality of it rather than what the American military was showing. And yet there she was on an American military operation. So why was she part of that group? Why would they have allowed her, in other words, to be there, knowing her track record and what she was willing to do with regards to the photographs? But otherwise, she was there, I guess, as something, maybe even as the usual female lead when it comes to a Kong film, and they did have some moments with Kong showcasing some kind of affection towards her, but that was pretty much it. It seems like maybe with Hiddleston and Brie Larson's character that it was going to be more in a future sequel, that they would have more dominant roles. And then that was it. As far as the storyline itself and what happened, so they arrived at the Kong area, the Kong Skull Island, and then that's when they immediately got attacked by Kong. That was a great scene as well. Seeing him in full action using trees as missiles, as trajectories, that was really, really cool to see. And then him being able to take on multitude of these soldiers and then surviving them with relative ease, that created the tension with Jackson's character. Goodman's character was also, his storyline was very good too, because you got to see him trying to keep things quiet while at the same time knowing that his mission was being put forth, to in his case save the world. That was a really good point, a gray area that was still left for you to decide. Was he truly there to try to protect the world from these monsters? Because it seems like the reason I question it is because the Skull Island itself seems to have been very isolated as is. In other words, the monsters weren't getting out. There was this natural barrier of a huge storm, the island itself being in the middle of nowhere, but there was a huge storm surrounding it that would prevent anything from going in or out unless there was extreme measures taken. So the island was pretty well isolated. There was no risk to the world. So was he truly, absolutely trying to save the world by discovering these monsters, or was it more selfish? Like, was he absolutely trying to find them, maybe make a career out of himself, maybe just answer that question within him, like, are these monsters real, even if it meant lots of people being killed in the process? That's why, to see him, to see Goodman's character eventually killed by one of the actual skull creatures, very memorable death too. It basically swallows him, not whole, but you can tell that he essentially gets eaten alive and then is probably rotting away within one of the skull crawler's bellies while he's still alive. So quite a ways to go. It was interesting to see that played out too. Ultimately, though, the film later on, the military, they take on a stance. In this case, the Colonel, the Samuel Jackson's character, that he will find the missing soldier, but really his ulterior motive is he wants to get revenge on Kong. That was really great to see too. That was a surprise as well, because you never really see that within one of the past Kong films. Normally, the military is just acting defensively against Kong, like if they even did so in some of the past films. In this case, this is pure revenge. Like the Colonel is leading a team, a small team, to try to find huge explosives because they want to take out Kong outright, like he does at least, and the soldiers have to obey him thereafter. So that was really cool to see too, because that was another interesting plot point. But the only thing I would say that the film lacked on, and then maybe that's why it's doing well but not quite so well, it seems like it's a small picture overall. It's a big on the outside, but when you actually watch it, it seems small. Maybe because it took so much, like the action was there on the island. When you see the same shots over and over involving a background filled with the same type of forest, it makes it seem like everything was filmed in one area and that all the action only takes place in one area. It's kind of hard to describe. Like, think of it this way: Jurassic Park, everything took place on an island, but it never seemed like it was a tiny bit of the island, a small world within the island. No, you went to various exotic locations, all completely different from one another, each one a different part of the world. It seemed like it was a whole universe that you were visiting there. Not so in this case. In this case, it was just the same backdrop, the same trees, the same lake, the same forest, and then that was it. It made it absolutely, to me, made it seem like a much smaller film than it should be. Maybe that's why in the trailers, like, they kept emphasizing on the action, but otherwise I thought like it could have been interesting if they would have visited the waters, or if they would have visited someplace else. The only other thing I would make sure that this film was critiqued on is there were some lighthearted moments, but some moments were too lighthearted. Like, some stuff was really serious that was happening, and then all of a sudden there were jokes being made. I think if they added a little bit more sense of dread within the film, it would have created much more of an impact on the seriousness of the Kong Skull Island location. Not like, don't take it too far. Not like the Godzilla 2014, which was almost monotonous, almost depressing for the entire movie. Not like that far, but in this case, it was a good. You can give some lighthearted moments, but at the same time, you can't go too far as well on that part. And then finally, at the very end, be sure to stay after the credits, because there you'll be able to see the quick 2 minutes, something like that, scene showcasing the MonsterVerse setup. You get to see some interesting shots, in this case from a Monarch presentation, showcasing what looks to be like wall murals, ancient wall murals, depicting, of course, Godzilla, and then it showcases Rodan, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and then finally one final mural which shows all of them in battle. And then the movie ends after the end credits with a gigantic roar from Godzilla himself, of course teasing the fact that there will be a fight between, in this case, Godzilla and King Kong. So that was really, really great to hear to that part. I was telling the people around me that, yes, let's stay afterwards, because I've heard about a scene being played after the fact, and so that was really good to hear too. So otherwise, Kong Skull Island, out of 4 stars, I would probably give it 2.5, probably close to 3. It was well made. There were good intentions around it. Not great. There could have been more character moments. There could have been more of scenes, I guess, showcasing Hiddleston and then Brie Larson's character as well. Lesser of the lighter moments, the jokes that stood out. The action, though, was really good. The special effects were really good too. The acting was really good too. The storyline, again, as I mentioned, all those examples branched out into areas that made sense, that were real, that showcased people in real situations, and then in those few moments when it showed the true dangers of the Skull Island, I like that part too. So I do recommend seeing it whenever you have a chance. Go see it in theaters now. If not, you can always wait until it comes out later on video, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, and then see that there too. So alright everybody, that is my formal review then for Kong Skull Island. I'll be interested to hear what your opinions are of the film. Have you had a chance to see it? What did you think? Was it everything you thought it would be? Did it suck? Please post those comments below. That would be really good to hear. So alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.